When I came back 3 days early from my work trip, my toilet, bathroom, and kitchen were being renovated. My sister said, "We're remodeling before moving her hubby in." And her in-laws snickered. I simply said, "Okay." The next day, she phoned me. "There are 2 police cruisers out front of the house." I thought I knew what heartbreak was, what real betrayal felt like, until I walked into my own home, 3 days earlier than planned, and found my own sister standing in the middle of my kitchen, a sledgehammer in her hand, laughing as she helped tear my entire life apart. Can you even imagine that level of disrespect? That sheer audacity? Because I still struggle with it. To understand why this gut punch hit me so hard, why finding my sister Amanda demolishing my house felt like the ultimate violation, you need a little backstory. My name is Maria, and I'm 32. This house, my beautiful 3-bedroom colonial in the Boston suburbs, wasn't some inheritance or a handout. It was my dream. I saved for 10 grueling years, lived in a cramped studio, took every side gig imaginable, and finally bought it 2 years ago. Every single mortgage payment, every property tax bill, it all came from my relentless hard work as a marketing executive. This house was my sanctuary, my biggest achievement. Amanda is 5 years younger than me, and from the moment she was born, she was the family princess. My parents adored her, indulged her every whim, and rarely, if ever, disciplined her. I still remember when I was 12 and she was 7, she took my favorite sweater without asking, then spilled juice all over it. When I dared to complain, my parents' response was always the same: "Maria, you're the big sister. You need to share with your little sister." That became the pattern of our lives. My toys became hers, my clothes became hers. My achievements? Barely a ripple before the spotlight swung back to whatever Amanda was doing. I accepted it because, deep down, I loved her and, honestly, I desperately wanted to please my parents. As we grew up, this dynamic only intensified. In high school, she borrowed my car without permission and ended up denting the passenger door. In college, she'd borrow money from my wallet without asking. After graduation, when I finally got my first apartment, she showed up with a suitcase after a fight with our parents, claiming she'd stay for a weekend. 3 months later, she was still there. Despite all this, I tried to maintain a relationship. She's family, and family sticks together, I'd tell myself, a mantra constantly reinforced by my parents. "Maria, Amanda looks up to you. You need to be the responsible one." Then, 2 months ago, Amanda called me in tears. She and her husband, Jake, had been evicted from their apartment. Turns out, they'd missed 3 months of rent. Jake had lost his job at an auto shop, and Amanda's part-time work at a clothing store was barely enough to cover their takeout habit. They needed a place to stay, just for a few weeks, until they got back on their feet. I hesitated. Jake and I had never gotten along. He seemed to resent me, probably because I had what Amanda wanted, financial stability and my own home. He'd make snide comments about my fancy marketing job and how people like me don't understand real work. Still, I couldn't let my sister be homeless. "You can stay on the pull-out couch in the living room," I told her, my voice full of a reluctance I tried to hide. "Just for a few weeks while you find a new place." Amanda was effusive, showering me with exaggerated gratitude. "You're the best sister ever. We'll be so quiet you won't even know we're here, and we'll help around the house, too." Famous last words. A week after they moved in, Amanda casually mentioned that Jake's parents, the Pattersons, were also having housing troubles. Their landlord was selling their building, and they needed somewhere to stay temporarily. Before I could even respond, she added, "I told them they could visit us here sometimes." That's okay, right? They're practically family. I wanted to scream no. My house isn't some sprawling mansion. It's barely large enough for me, let alone 5 adults. But Amanda looked at me with those pleading eyes, the exact same ones she'd used on our parents when she wanted the last cookie or a new toy. "Fine," I sighed, already feeling overwhelmed, but just for short visits. Then came the call from my boss, Linda. Our company was launching a major campaign in Chicago, and she wanted me to lead the presentation. It was a 2-week business trip, a massive opportunity. Success could mean a promotion to senior marketing director. The night before I left, I sat down with Amanda and Jake, trying to be firm but fair. Please keep the place clean. No parties. Call me if there are any issues with the house. And please remember, this is a temporary arrangement. Amanda nodded enthusiastically. Of course. We'll take good care of everything. Focus on your work and don't worry about us. As I packed my suitcase, a knot of unease twisting in my stomach, I had no idea that my sister was already planning to make my house her own permanent residence, whether I agreed or not. Chicago was beautiful in the spring. My hotel overlooked the river, and under different circumstances, I might have enjoyed the view. But from day one, something felt off. The first few days of presentation prep went smoothly. Our clients were impressed, and Linda was already dropping hints about that corner office. Keep this up, Maria, and we'll be talking about a serious promotion when we get back to Boston, she told me after a particularly successful meeting. But my text to Amanda went largely unanswered. When she did respond, the replies were brief, vague, everything's fine. House is good. When I tried to video call, she always had an excuse. I'm just heading out the door, or the reception is terrible in the house right now. 5 days into my trip, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Jenkins, my elderly neighbor who'd lived next door for 20 years. We weren't particularly close, but she'd water my plants, and I'd help with her groceries. Maria, dear, I wanted to check if everything's all right at your house, she said, her voice laced with concern. As far as I know, why do you ask? My stomach clenched. Well, there's been an awful lot of noise the past few days. Hammering, drilling, what sounds like walls coming down. And there are several cars parked outside every day. I saw men carrying what looked like bathroom fixtures and kitchen cabinets. My blood ran cold. Did you speak to my sister? I tried to, dear. She said you were having some renovations done while you were away. Is that right? I forced myself to stay calm, but my voice felt tight. Yes, that's right. Thank you for checking, Mrs. Jenkins. The moment we hung up, I called Amanda. She didn't answer the first 3 times. On the 4th try, she picked up, sounding irritated. What's up, Maria? I'm kind of busy. What's happening at the house? Mrs. Jenkins said there's construction going on. There was a pause, and I could hear muffled voices in the background. Oh, we're just doing some deep cleaning, Amanda replied, her voice artificially bright. Jake's parents are helping. We wanted to surprise you with a super clean house when you get back. Deep cleaning doesn't involve hammering and drilling, I said, my voice rising. Jake was just hanging some pictures and fixing that. Wobbly shelf in the kitchen. Nothing major. Something in her tone didn't sit right with me. Amanda, please don't make any changes to my house without talking to me first. Of course not. We're just cleaning, I promise. Listen, I've got to go. We'll talk later, okay? She hung up before I could respond. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the noises Mrs. Jenkins described, the evasiveness in Amanda's voice, the cars parked outside my house every day. My sister had boundary issues, yes, but would she actually renovate my house without permission? The next morning, I received a text from Amanda, just making your house beautiful. You'll love it when you see it. Attached was a photo that made my blood run cold. It showed a corner of what I recognized as my kitchen, but the cabinets had been removed and the walls were partially demolished. Tarps covered my furniture. I immediately called Linda, my boss, and explained the situation, my voice trembling. I'm so sorry, but there's an emergency at home. My sister is making unauthorized renovations to my house. I need to get back as soon as possible. Linda was incredibly understanding. We've done the hard part of the presentation already. The team can handle the follow-up meetings. Family emergencies come first. Keep me posted. I booked the next flight to Boston, 3 days earlier than planned. I didn't tell Amanda I was coming home. Part of me still hoped Mrs. Jenkins had exaggerated, that the photo showed a minor repair rather than a full renovation. But as the plane took off, another text from Amanda popped up. I hope you don't mind, but we're repainting your bedroom. Jake thinks the current color is too dark. During the flight, I couldn't focus on anything. My mind raced with questions and fears. What exactly was happening to my house? Why would Amanda do this? How extensive was the damage? The 3-hour flight felt like an eternity. When I landed, I rented a car rather than taking my usual ride share. I needed the freedom to react to whatever I might find. The drive from Logan Airport to my suburb normally took 40 minutes. Today, with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, it felt like seconds. As I turned onto my street, my heart sank. There were 4 vehicles parked in front of my house: Amanda's old Honda, a truck I recognized as Jake's, a large van with Patterson's contracting on the side, and a pickup truck loaded with building materials. This was no small repair project. This was a full-scale renovation, and I hadn't authorized any of it. I sat in my car for several minutes, trying to calm my racing heart. Part of me wanted to drive away, pretend this wasn't happening, maybe call the police right then. But I needed to see exactly what was going on, to confront this situation head-on. With trembling hands, I took my house key from my purse and approached the front door. I noticed the doorbell had been removed, leaving exposed wires in its place. Taking a deep breath, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Dust, paint fumes, and something acrid that burned my nostrils. Then came the visual shock. My once beautiful entryway was unrecognizable. The hardwood floors I'd lovingly restored were covered with plastic sheets, splattered with paint. The walls were half stripped of their tasteful gray paint, with patches of garish yellow in their place. I moved further into the house, each step revealing more devastation. The living room furniture had been pushed to one side and covered with sheets. Sample paint swatches covered an entire wall in colors I would never choose: bright orange, neon green, and a purple so dark it was almost black. But it was the bathroom that truly horrified me. The door had been removed from its hinges, and inside, complete destruction awaited. My elegant clawfoot tub that I'd splurged on as a housewarming gift to myself was gone. The toilet had been disconnected and sat in the hallway. The marble sink vanity I'd installed just 6 months ago had been smashed to pieces, its remnants piled in a corner. With growing dread, I made my way to the kitchen, my favorite room in the house. The space where I'd hosted dinner parties, perfected my grandmother's lasagna recipe, and spent peaceful Sunday mornings with coffee and crosswords was utterly transformed. The quartz countertops had been ripped out. My custom cabinets were gone. Even the hardwood floor had been partially torn up, exposing the subfloor beneath. The stainless steel appliances I'd saved for were disconnected and pushed to the center of the room. Standing in the middle of this disaster zone was my sister, Amanda, wearing overalls splattered with paint and holding what appeared to be design plans. Beside her stood her husband, Jake, smirking as he leaned against what remained of my kitchen island. Behind them, Jake's parents, the Pattersons, were directing 2 workers who were measuring the space where my refrigerator had once stood. For a moment, no one noticed me. I stood frozen in shock, unable to comprehend the complete violation of my home. Then, Amanda looked up and saw me. Instead of guilt or embarrassment, her face lit up with excitement. "Maria, you're back early," she exclaimed, as if I'd just interrupted a surprise birthday party rather than the unauthorized demolition of my house. "We wanted to have more done before you got back." "What? What have you done to my house?" I managed to whisper, my voice choked with emotion. Amanda spread her arms wide, gesturing to the destruction around us. "We're renovating before moving in. Isn't it exciting? Jake's parents are contractors, so they're giving us an amazing deal. Moving in," I repeated, certain I'd misheard. Jake stepped forward, putting his arm around Amanda. "We thought since you're so busy with your fancy job and travel so much, you wouldn't mind if we made this place our permanent home." Amanda's always loved this neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson, a stern-looking woman with artificially blonde hair, nodded approvingly. "The layout was all wrong for a family anyway. Too many small rooms. We're opening everything up, making it more modern." Mr. Patterson added, "That bathroom was terribly outdated, and who needs a bathtub these days? We're putting in a walk-in shower, much more practical." They all looked at me expectantly, as if waiting for my gratitude. When I didn't immediately respond, they exchanged glances and then burst into laughter, as if my shock was the most amusing thing they'd seen all day. "Your face," Jake hooted. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Amanda wiped away tears of laughter. Don't worry, sis. We know what we're doing. This place is going to look amazing when we're done. I couldn't process what was happening. These people had invaded my home, destroyed my property, and now stood laughing at my distress. 1,000 responses ran through my mind, from screaming to calling the police immediately. Instead, I said the only word I could. Manage, okay. Then I turned and walked to my bedroom, needing a moment alone to think. But even this sanctuary had been violated. My bed had been pushed to the center of the room and covered with a plastic sheet. My dresser drawers were open, clothes spilling out. The walls had been prepped for painting, with my carefully chosen sage green covered in primer. I opened my closet to find my personal belongings shoved haphazardly inside. Photo albums, books, and mementos from trips abroad were piled in disorganized heaps. I searched frantically for the wooden box that contained my most precious possessions, my grandmother's ring, letters from my late father, and photographs too special to be digitized. After 10 minutes of desperate searching, I found it beneath a stack of winter sweaters. The lock had been broken, and inside, several items were missing, including my grandmother's gold locket. With trembling hands, I sat on the edge of my covered bed and tried to gather my thoughts. This wasn't just a renovation. This was a takeover, a hostile one. There was a knock at the bedroom door, and Amanda entered without waiting for a response. So, what do you think? She asked, gesturing to the chaos of my room. We're thinking light blue for the walls, and we're getting rid of that old dusk. Jake needs space for his gaming setup. Amanda, I said, my voice steadier than I expected, who gave you permission to renovate my house? She laughed, as if I'd told a joke. Come on, Maria. We talked about this. You said we could stay here. I said you could stay temporarily on the pull-out couch. I never said you could move in permanently. And I definitely never said you could tear apart my house. Amanda's smile faltered slightly. But you're never here anyway. You're always working or traveling. It doesn't make sense for you to have this big house all to yourself when we need the space. This is my house, I said firmly. I paid for it. My name is on the mortgage. Don't be so selfish, Amanda replied, her voice taking on the wheedling tone she'd used with our parents. We're family. What's yours is mine, right? That's what Mom and Dad always said. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I need you to stop the renovations immediately. This is not your house to change. Amanda's expression hardened. Well, it's too late for that. The bathroom's already gutted, and we've put deposits down with the contractors. Besides, Jake's parents are investing a lot of money in these improvements. Improvements I didn't ask for or want, I pointed out. She shrugged. You'll thank us when it's done. The house will be worth more. And who will be living in this more valuable house? I asked, though I already knew the answer. All of us, of course. One big, happy family. She didn't quite meet my eyes. Anyway, we've got to get back to work. The flooring guys are coming tomorrow to talk about the hardwood. As she turned to leave, I asked, where am I supposed to sleep tonight? My bed is covered in plastic, and the bathroom is unusable. Amanda glanced back carelessly. Oh, we set up a cot in the basement, just temporarily, while the work is being done. Or you could get a hotel. I guess you can afford it with your big salary. With that, she left, closing the door behind her. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process not just the destruction of my home, but the complete disregard for my feelings, my property, and my rights. Something Amanda had said struck me as odd. We talked about this, she'd claimed, but we never had. Not once had she mentioned renovations, or moving in permanently. Was she gaslighting me, or did she genuinely believe we'd had this conversation? Either way, I needed to understand exactly what was happening and why. And I needed evidence before I decided what to do next. After composing myself, I decided to gather more information. I pretended to accept the situation, telling them I needed to run some errands after my flight. In reality, I sat in my car at the end of the street, making phone calls to my bank and insurance company to check for any unusual activity. What I discovered alarmed me further. Someone had attempted to access my savings account 3 times in the past week, though thankfully my complex password had prevented them from succeeding. My insurance company informed me that someone claiming to be me had called about adding additional people to my homeowner's policy, but couldn't provide the security answers. Around 6 o'clock that evening, I watched Jake's parents leave in their van. An hour later, the contractors departed. I waited another 30 minutes before quietly returning to the house, using my key to enter through the back door that led directly to the kitchen. I could hear voices coming from the living room. Amanda, Jake, and what sounded like Jake's father, who must have returned. I crept closer, staying out of sight, and began recording on my phone. The bathroom demo went great today, Jake was saying. Tomorrow we tackle the master bedroom. I'm thinking we make that our room, and we can use the second bedroom for Mom and Dad. What about Maria? Amanda asked, though her tone suggested this was a minor concern. Jake snorted. What about her? She's never here anyway. She can have the small bedroom by the laundry if she's even around. She seemed pretty upset earlier, Amanda said, a hint of worry in her voice. Who cares? Jake's father replied gruffly. Once we've put enough money into renovations, she can't just kick us out. We'll have equity in the place. My buddy at the law firm says it's called constructive ownership or something. Jake added, if we improve the property and live here long enough, we can claim rights to it. I felt sick. They weren't just renovating without permission, they were actively trying to take my house from me. I found some of her financial documents in her home office, Amanda said casually. Her mortgage payments are less than we were paying in rent for that crappy apartment. We'll save so much money living here. Did you find the deed like I asked? Mr. Patterson asked. Not yet, but I have her birth certificate and social security card. I found them in that wooden box in her closet, along with some old jewelry. I thought we could sell it to help pay for the new kitchen appliances. My blood ran cold. They had stolen my identity documents and my grandmother's jewelry. This wasn't just a boundary violation anymore. It was criminal. What if Maria won't go along with it? Amanda asked, voicing what seemed like her first real concern. Jake laughed. She always gives you what you want eventually. Your parents made sure of that, didn't they? Poor Maria, always having to share with little sister. Besides, Mr. Patterson added, who's going to want to live in a construction zone? The renovation will take months. She'll get tired of the noise and dust and move out on her own. Then we just don't let her back in. I talked to your parents yesterday, Jake said to Amanda. They think it's great that we're all going to be living together. Your mom said Maria needs to support family like she always has. They're coming to visit next weekend, Amanda replied. We can show them the renovation plans then. I'd heard enough. Carefully, I retreated to the back door and slipped outside again. In my car, I replayed the recording, making sure it had captured their conversation clearly. It had. My mind was reeling. My own sister was conspiring to steal my house, with the apparent blessing of our parents. They had taken my personal documents, stolen family heirlooms, and planned to make my life so uncomfortable I would leave my own home. And they were using some twisted interpretation of family loyalty to justify it all. I drove to a nearby hotel and checked in for the night. In the anonymous quiet of the room, I broke down, allowing myself to feel the full weight of the betrayal. I cried until no more tears would come, then washed my face with cold water and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. They will not take what's mine, I told myself firmly. Not my house, not my identity, not my peace of mind. I opened my laptop and began researching. First, I looked up constructive ownership and discovered that what Jake had described was a distortion of adverse possession laws, which wouldn't apply in this situation anyway. Then, I searched for lawyers specializing in property rights and identity theft. By midnight, I had a plan. It wouldn't be easy, and it would likely permanently damage my relationship with Amanda and possibly my parents. But I had been pushed too far. It was time to stand up for myself, even against family. Before going to sleep, I made one more call to Mrs. Jenkins, my neighbor. Maria, dear, are you all right? Did you make it home? Yes, Mrs. Jenkins, I'm home. I was wondering, would you be willing to make a statement about the construction you've observed at my house and possibly testify that you never heard me give permission for any renovations? There was a pause. Then, Mrs. Jenkins said firmly, absolutely. What that girl is doing to your beautiful home is a disgrace. You just tell me what you need. For the first time since opening my front door to chaos, I felt a glimmer of hope. I wasn't alone in this fight. I spent a restless night planning my next moves. By morning, I was exhausted but resolved. I showered, put on fresh clothes, and began making the calls that would set my plan in motion. My first call that morning was to Sarah Donovan, a lawyer specializing in property disputes whom I'd found through a colleague's recommendation. Her office agreed to see me immediately when I explained the urgency of my situation. Sarah was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 40s who listened intently as I described what had happened and played the recording I'd made. "This is outrageous," she said when I finished, "but also legally actionable in multiple ways. Unauthorized construction, identity theft, conversion of property, possible fraud. We need to move quickly." We developed a comprehensive plan. First, we would document everything thoroughly. Second, we would secure my financial and personal information. Third, we would prepare legal notices. And finally, we would involve law enforcement. "Taking your personal documents and jewelry is theft," Sarah explained. "The unauthorized construction is property damage and trespassing, despite your initial permission for them to stay temporarily. And their recorded statements show clear intent to defraud you of your property." From Sarah's office, I went directly to my bank. I met with the branch manager and explained the situation. We closed all my existing accounts and opened new ones with enhanced security measures. I placed a freeze on my credit and set up fraud alerts. Next, I visited the local police station to file a report about the theft of my identity documents and jewelry. The officer who took my statement, Detective Rodriguez, listened sympathetically. "Family situations can be the most difficult," she said. "But what they're doing is clearly illegal. We'll send officers with you tomorrow morning to document the damage and recover your stolen property." "Tomorrow?" I asked, anxious to move more quickly. Detective Rodriguez nodded. "We need to prepare the proper paperwork, and, honestly, it's better to let them continue, thinking they're getting away with it, document everything they do." In the meantime, I spent the rest of the day taking care of practical matters. I found a short-term rental apartment where I could stay if needed. I contacted my home insurance company to report the unauthorized renovations. I reached out to my boss, Linda, to update her and request a few more days off work, which she readily granted. "Take whatever time you need," she said. "Your home is at stake." I also called the city building department and confirmed what I suspected. No permits had been filed for renovations at my address. The inspector I spoke with, Mr. Grayson, was particularly concerned about potential code violations. "Unpermitted bathroom and kitchen renovations can be dangerous and costly to correct," he explained. "We'll send someone to inspect the property tomorrow along with the police." By late afternoon, I had one more difficult call to make, to my parents. I dreaded this conversation, knowing they had a blind spot when it came to Amanda. Still, they needed to hear the truth from me before Amanda spun her version of events. My mother answered on the third ring. "Maria? Amanda told us you're back from your trip early. Is everything okay?" "No, Mom. Everything is not okay," I replied, my voice steady. "Amanda and Jake have essentially gutted my house without permission. They've taken my personal documents and some of my jewelry. They're planning to force me out and take over my home." There was a long silence. Then my mother sighed. "I'm sure it's not that bad, honey. Amanda said they're just helping fix up a few things while you're busy with work. You know how she likes decorating." "This isn't decorating, Mom. My bathroom is destroyed. My kitchen is half demolished. They've taken over my bedroom and pushed my things into closets. They stole Grandma's locket." "I'm sure she was just borrowing it," my mother said dismissively. "You two have always shared everything. I never shared my house with her. I never gave permission for any of this." My mother's voice hardened. "Family helps family, Maria. You have that big house all to yourself, and Amanda and Jake need a place to live. Can't you? Just be generous for once." Her words stung, but they also confirmed what I'd heard in the recording. My parents were supporting Amanda's takeover of my home. "Mom, I've been generous my entire life, especially with Amanda. But this goes beyond generosity. This is about respect for my property and my boundaries. I'm going to have to take legal action if they don't leave." "Legal action against your own sister?" My mother sounded shocked. What would your father say? He'd say the same thing you're saying. That I should give Amanda whatever she wants because she's family. But I can't do that anymore, Mom. Not with my home. You'll regret this, Maria. Family is all we have in this world. Family should support each other, not steal from each other, I replied. I love you and Dad, but I need to protect myself now. The call ended with my mother in tears and me feeling both guilty and resolved. I had expected this reaction, but it hurt nonetheless. That evening, I returned to the hotel with takeout food and my laptop. I created a detailed inventory of everything in my house, including photographs from before the renovation began. I wrote down every conversation I could remember with Amanda about her staying with me, emphasizing the temporary nature of our agreement. I also prepared for the worst-case scenario, a prolonged legal battle. I mapped out my finances, calculating how long I could afford both legal fees and temporary housing if necessary. Before going to bed, I texted Amanda, I'm staying at a hotel tonight since the house is unlivable. We need to talk about this situation tomorrow. Her reply came quickly, don't be so dramatic. The house is fine, but whatever. See you tomorrow. Her dismissive tone strengthened my resolve. For too long, I had allowed Amanda and my parents to disregard my feelings and boundaries. That ended now. I set my alarm for 6 a.m., knowing I needed to be prepared for what would likely be the most confrontational day of my life. As I drifted off to sleep, I reminded myself that standing up for myself wasn't selfish. It was necessary. I woke before my alarm, anxiety pushing me into consciousness. After a quick shower and coffee, I met Detective Rodriguez and Officer Bennett in the police station parking lot at 7:30. We have the warrant to enter the premises and recover your stolen property, Detective Rodriguez explained. The building inspector will meet us there. Sarah, my lawyer, joined us, carrying a folder of legal documents. I've prepared an eviction notice and a cease and desist order for the unauthorized construction, she explained. Once we document everything, we'll serve these papers. We agreed to arrive separately. I would enter first with my key, followed by the officers and Sarah. The building inspector, Mr. Grayson, would arrive a few minutes later to avoid overwhelming everyone at once. At 8 a.m. sharp, I pulled into my driveway. The contractor's van and trucks were already there, along with Jake's pickup. I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves, and approached my front door. I used my key to enter and found the house already buzzing with activity. Workers were carrying debris from my bathroom through the living room. The noise of power tools came from the kitchen. Amanda and Jake were standing in the entryway, reviewing what looked like fabric samples. Maria, Amanda said, looking up. You're back. Look at these curtain options for the living room. I'm thinking the navy blue would look amazing with the new wall color. Before I could respond, Detective Rodriguez and Officer Bennett entered behind me, followed by Sarah. Amanda's expression shifted from surprise to confusion. Who are these people? I'm Detective Rodriguez with Boston PD, the detective said, showing her badge. We have a warrant to search these premises and recover stolen property belonging to Maria Reynolds. Jake stepped forward aggressively. What the hell is this? You called the cops on us. He glared at me with undisguised hatred. I didn't give permission for any renovations, I said calmly. And someone took my personal documents and my grandmother's jewelry from my bedroom. This is ridiculous. Amanda cried. We're family. We're just helping improve your house. Sarah stepped forward. I'm Sarah Donovan, Miss Reynolds' attorney. I have here a cease and desist order for all unauthorized construction, as well as an eviction notice requiring you to vacate the premises immediately. Eviction? You can't evict us. Jake shouted. This is our home too. Actually, it's not, I replied. My name is the only one on the deed and mortgage. You were invited as temporary guests, not permanent residents, and certainly not authorized to renovate. The commotion had drawn attention. Jake's parents emerged from the kitchen, and the workers paused their activities, watching the scene unfold. What's going on here? Mr. Patterson demanded, his face reddening when he saw the police officers. At that moment, Mr. Grayson from the building department arrived, clipboard in hand. I'm here to inspect the unpermitted construction work, he announced. The chaos that followed was both terrible and vindicating. Detective Rodriguez and Officer Bennett began photographing the damage to the house while Mr. Grayson examined the demolished bathroom and kitchen, shaking his head in disapproval. "This work violates multiple building codes," he declared. No permits were filed. "I'm issuing a stop work order immediately." The contractors, looking alarmed, began gathering their tools. One of them approached me directly. "We were told you had approved all this work," he said apologetically. "If we'd known it wasn't authorized, we never would have started." Jake tried a different approach. "Maria gave us this house as a gift," he claimed. "She said we could make it our own." "This is just a misunderstanding." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Do you have documentation of this alleged gift? A deed transfer, perhaps?" "It was a verbal agreement," Jake insisted. "Between family." "That's not how real estate transfers work," Sarah replied dryly. "And Miss Reynolds has recordings of you and your family discussing your plan to force her out of her own home." Jake's face paled. Amanda burst into tears. "You recorded us?" she wailed. "How could you spy on your own sister? How could you steal my house?" I countered. "How could you take Grandma's locket and my personal documents?" Detective Rodriguez returned from my bedroom, holding a small box. "We found these in the nightstand of the room Mr. and Mrs. Patterson are using," she said, opening it to reveal my birth certificate, social security card, and several pieces of jewelry, including my grandmother's locket. "Those are mine," I confirmed, relief washing over me at seeing the recovered items. Amanda's tears suddenly stopped, replaced by cold anger. "You always were selfish, Maria. Mom and Dad said we needed to share, but you never learned that lesson, did you?" "Sharing is voluntary," I replied. "What you're doing isn't sharing, it's taking." "We put money into this place," Mr. Patterson interjected. "We've invested thousands in materials already." "Without permission," Sarah pointed out, "that doesn't give you ownership rights. In fact, you may be liable for the cost of restoring the property to its original condition." The situation escalated quickly. Jake began shouting threats about lawsuits and payback. Amanda alternated between crying and accusing me of betraying family. Mrs. Patterson started frantically gathering their personal belongings, while Mr. Patterson argued loudly with the building inspector about the quality of their unpermitted work. Through it all, I remained calm, supported by Sarah's steady presence and the authority of the officers. When Jake stepped toward me aggressively, Officer Bennett moved between us, a clear warning in his stance. "You have 2 hours to collect your personal belongings and vacate the premises," Detective Rodriguez announced. "We'll remain here while you do so." "And where are we supposed to go?" Amanda demanded. "That's not Maria's problem," Sarah said firmly. "You had a place to live before you decided to commandeer hers." As they reluctantly began collecting their things, Amanda made one last appeal to me. "Mom and Dad will never forgive you for this. Is that what you want, to destroy our family?" For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I overreacting? Was I putting property before family? Then I remembered the recording. Their callous plan to push me out of my own home. The theft of my most precious keepsakes. "You destroyed our relationship when you decided to steal from me instead of asking for help," I said quietly. "I would have helped you find a place, maybe even loaned you money for a down payment. But you chose deception and theft over honesty." Amanda had no response to that. She turned away and joined Jake in gathering their belongings. 2 hours later, they were gone. The contractors had removed their equipment after Mr. Grayson spoke with them about the permit violations. Detective Rodriguez had taken statements from everyone involved and assured me they would be investigating the identity theft and property conversion. As the police car pulled away, I stood in my driveway with Sarah and surveyed my house from the outside. It looked the same as always, a modest colonial with blue shutters and a red door. But inside was devastation that would take months and thousands of dollars to repair. "What happens now?" I asked Sarah. "Now we document everything for insurance and potential civil action," she replied. "I'll file for a restraining order to keep them from returning, and you'll need to change your locks immediately." I nodded, exhausted but relieved. The confrontation was over, but the rebuilding was just beginning, both for my house and possibly for my family relationships. As Sarah drove away, my phone rang. It was my mother. I took a deep breath and answered, ready for the next battle. How could you? My mother's voice trembled with anger. Amanda called us in tears. She said you had the police throw them out on the street. Is that who you've become, Maria? Someone who calls the police on her own sister. I leaned against the porch railing, surveying the garden I'd planted last spring. Mom, Amanda and Jake were destroying my house without permission. They stole my identity documents and grandma's jewelry. What would you have had me do? Family works things out privately, she insisted. Your father and I are devastated. Amanda says you wouldn't even discuss it with her. That's not true, I replied, keeping my voice steady. I tried to talk to her when I first got home. She dismissed my concerns completely, and I overheard them planning to force me out of my own house. My mother scoffed. She would never do that. You've always been jealous of Amanda, always complaining that we favored her. The accusation stung, but I recognized it as a deflection tactic. Mom, I have recordings of their conversations. I have police reports documenting the theft and property damage. This isn't about childhood jealousy. Recordings? You spied on your sister. My mother sounded scandalized. In my own home, which she was demolishing without permission, I pointed out. Mom, I need to know. Did you tell Amanda it was okay for her to renovate my house and move in permanently? There was a telling pause. We might have mentioned that it would be nice if you two could live together. You have all that space, and Amanda and Jake have been struggling. So you encourage this? Another pause. Not the renovation exactly, but yes, we thought it would be good for both of you to share the house. The confirmation hurt, but it wasn't surprising. Mom, I worked for 10 years to afford this house. It's mine. If Amanda needs help with housing, there are ways to address that without taking over my property. You sound so cold, talking about property and ownership. This is your sister. And this is my life, my home, my boundaries. I took a deep breath. I love you and Dad, and I love Amanda, despite what she's done. But I won't allow anyone to disrespect me this way. Not even family. Well, my mother said after a long silence, I hope you're happy with your empty house and your precious boundaries. Your sister needed you, and you failed her. The call ended, leaving me emotionally drained but resolute. I had expected this reaction, had prepared for it, but it still hurt deeply to be cast as the villain in a situation where I was clearly the victim. The next few weeks were a blur of insurance claims, contractor estimates, and legal proceedings. The damage to my house was extensive. The bathroom needed to be completely rebuilt. The kitchen required new cabinets, countertops, and flooring. Walls needed to be repaired and repainted throughout the house. The insurance company initially balked at covering the damage, arguing that I had given permission for Amanda and Jake to stay in the house. But with Sarah's help and the police reports documenting the unauthorized nature of the renovations, they eventually agreed to cover most of the repairs, minus a substantial deductible. I took a week off work to deal with the immediate issues, sleeping on an air mattress in my bedroom since my bed had been damaged during the attempted renovation. Linda and my colleagues were incredibly supportive, with several of them coming over on a Saturday to help clear debris and clean areas that weren't structurally damaged. I can't believe your sister did this, Linda said as we sorted through the kitchen items that had been haphazardly packed in boxes. Family or not, this is criminal. The worst part is my parents taking her side, I admitted. They honestly believe I'm in the wrong for not letting her take my house. That's some serious enabling behavior, Linda observed. Have you thought about talking to someone professional about all this? It's a lot to process on your own. She was right. The next day, I found a therapist specializing in family trauma, Dr. Lily Chen. Our first session was revelatory. What you're describing is a lifetime of boundary violations, Dr. Chen said after I recounted the history with Amanda. Your sister learned early that your boundaries didn't matter, and your parents reinforced that lesson. This house incident is just the most extreme example of a pattern that's been in place since childhood. Over the following months, as my house slowly came back together, I also began the process of rebuilding my sense of self. Dr. Chen helped me recognize the patterns that had led to this crisis and develop strategies for establishing and maintaining healthy boundaries. The legal consequences for Amanda and Jake were significant, but not severe. They were ordered to pay restitution for the damage not covered by insurance. The identity theft charges were reduced when they returned all my documents. No one served jail time, which was a relief, despite everything. For months after the confrontation, my mother called unexpectedly. Her voice sounded different, less defensive, more tentative. "Your father and I visited Amanda and Jake in their new apartment yesterday," she began. "Oh," I responded neutrally, having learned to protect myself emotionally in these conversations. "It was eye-opening," she continued. "The place is a disaster, Maria. Holes punched in walls, broken furniture, filthy conditions. And they're already 3 months behind on rent, according to the notice taped to their door." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, genuinely concerned despite everything. I think we might have been wrong about some things," my mother admitted, the words clearly difficult for her. "We always saw Amanda as the one who needed more help, more support. We didn't see how she took advantage. It wasn't a full apology, but it was a start." "Thank you for saying that, Mom." "How's the house coming along?" she asked, changing the subject slightly. "It's getting there. The bathroom is finally functional again. The kitchen still needs work. Would it be all right if your father and I came to see it sometime and maybe take you to dinner?" The olive branch was small but significant. "I'd like that, Mom." 2 weeks later, my parents visited. They were appropriately shocked by the remaining damage and, for the first time, didn't try to minimize or excuse Amanda's actions. Over dinner at my favorite Italian restaurant, my father reached across the table and took my hand. "We didn't protect you the way we should have," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "As parents, we failed to teach Amanda about respect and consequences, and we failed you by always expecting you to give in." "I'm sorry, Maria." Tears filled my eyes. "Thank you, Dad. That means a lot." Our relationship began to heal, slowly and with occasional setbacks, but with genuine effort on both sides. As for Amanda, she eventually reached out 6 months after the incident. We met at a neutral coffee shop, both of us nervous and guarded. "I've been in therapy," she said after we'd settled with our drinks. "Turns out I have some issues with entitlement and boundaries." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "What I did to your house was wrong," she acknowledged. "At the time, I genuinely believed I was entitled to it." "That's messed up." "I know that now." "It is," I agreed, "but I appreciate you saying it." "Jake and I split up," she added. "He wanted to sue you for the renovation costs." When I said that was crazy, he got really angry. That's when I finally saw what everyone else had been seeing. We talked for 2 hours, covering painful ground, but also finding moments of the connection we'd had as children before expectations and entitlement had poisoned our relationship. I didn't invite Amanda back to stay with me, and she didn't ask. Instead, I helped her find resources for affordable housing and recommended her for an entry-level position at a company where a friend worked, small steps toward independence that she would have to maintain herself. A year after the renovation disaster, my house was finally restored, in some ways better than before. I'd taken the opportunity to make updates I'd been planning anyway, choosing every fixture and finish myself. On the anniversary of that terrible homecoming, I hosted a small dinner party for the people who had helped me through the crisis: Linda and her husband, Sarah, Mrs. Jenkins, and 2 colleagues who had spent weekends helping with repairs. As we sat around my dining table, enjoying good food and better company, Linda raised her glass in a toast. To Maria, who learned that sometimes the strongest thing you can say is no, and that the hardest boundaries to set are often the most important ones. Everyone clinked glasses, and a warmth filled me that had nothing to do with the wine. I had lost some things this past year: the blind trust in my sister, the unquestioning support of my parents, the naive belief that family would never truly hurt me. But I had gained something far more valuable: the knowledge that I was strong enough to stand up for myself, even against those I loved. That setting boundaries wasn't selfish but necessary for healthy relationships. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their destructive behavior. As my guests chatted and laughed around me, I realized that I had created a different kind of family here. One built on mutual respect, clear boundaries, and genuine care. The kind of family I deserved all along. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with people you love, only to be met with anger or disbelief? Sometimes the hardest lesson is learning that true love includes respect for each other's space and property. Tell me what you think. I really want to know. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever faced something like this with your own family? Leave a comment below, and if this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in difficult family situations. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's how we teach others to treat us with the respect we deserve.